the thing that matters the least is your opinion, right? Your actual opinion. And that's what people tend to do. They start thinking about what they actually think. And that's really not what matters.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we're gonna see. Okay, guys, so please don't forget your cameras. And okay, okay. Okay. So let's see if Shamir joins. Okay, now we're good. So we're gonna start this week with the speaking section. We're gonna be working on it 2 weeks, actually, because it's a little bit long in terms of tasks, in terms of the number of tasks that it has. The speaking section, in terms of time, is pretty short. It lasts only 20 minutes approximately, maybe sometimes less than 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, you're gonna be done with the speaking. Now, as for questions, you will have 4 different types of questions here in the speaking. So if you can see my screen, if you can see this little chart in here, these are the 4 questions that you have in the speaking section. Okay, so you have, first of all, you have both independent and integrated questions. Okay, so what does that mean, independent and integrated? So there's a difference. With the independent questions, as the name probably suggests, it means that it's just your speaking. So they are mostly evaluating the way you speak, but that's pretty much it. They will basically ask you a question and a personal opinion. So they will want to know what you think about a certain familiar topic. So you just have to give your opinion, speak for a while, 45 seconds. And they're going to evaluate that. Now with the integrated questions, they are called integrated because you're supposed to integrate all your skills in order to answer the questions. So you're going to have to read something, you're going to have to sometimes listen to something, and then basically put you in practice your listening, your reading skills, and obviously your speaking skills, because you're going to have to summarize what you heard or what you read. Okay, so in the integrated part, you need to summarize certain content. So they give you something to summarize, you need to read it or listen to it, and then summarize. And they don't just look at the speaking, right? Because they need to actually see that you're summarizing the material in a concise way, that you're actually mentioning relevant information. So that's why it's called integrate, because you integrate all your skills, both listening, speaking, and what's the other one? Reading, right? Not writing. So the 3 of them. So today we're going to start with the independent one. And we're actually going to continue tomorrow because you know, the holidays, we didn't have one class yesterday. So today and tomorrow we'll take a look at the theory, and Friday and Monday will be for practice. Okay, we're going to work on the independent question. Is this okay so far, the overview of the speaking section? You guys have any questions here?
None.
Okay.
No, it's good.
All right, so as for the scoring, if you guys want to know any, I think it's a great idea to take a look at and try to understand how the speaking section is scored, because it's not like the reading or the writing, right, where it's wrong or right. So this is interesting, how they score the speaking section. So if you want to take a look at how this is scored, you can go to the ETS website, or maybe I can send you the link here, because they post the rubrics they have to score or evaluate your speaking. So for example, this is the one. I'll show you. So it's available. You just search for speaking rubrics, ETS, TOEFL, and you'll find it. Okay, so it's a whole description of what they're looking for. But I can summarize it for you guys and give you exactly what the points that you should be looking for are. So the first thing that they're going to be looking at is what you say. Okay, so this has to do with what you're saying. So for example, topic development is called. So for example, they look at task fulfillment. So it basically means, have you actually fulfilled the task? So are you doing what they're asking for? Have you responded or answered the question? So for example, if they ask you about food, and if you actually talk about food, and if you answer the question they're asking, then you're okay with this, right? If you don't change the subject, get off topic, if it's logical, basically. So that's pretty easy, I'd say, to obtain. Then you have support and development. So specifically in the first one, they're gonna ask you to justify what you say. So for example, you're gonna say, well, I think that online classes are better than traditional ones, but you cannot just say that. You need to prove it or justify it. So that's basically supporting development, how justified everything you say is. And then they look at how connected and how organized everything is. So if you're using transitions, if it has the structure of a normal speech, so how connected your ideas are, your progression of ideas, how you move on from one to another idea, how that transition goes. So this is mostly about using good transitions and connectors and using them in the right way. Okay, so that's also just vocabulary, I'd say. Then you have, I would say, the hardest one, which is delivery. So I'm sorry, no, I think the hard one is language and use, but delivery refers to the way you speak. So this is how you speak, okay? So this is about how you pronounce the words, how your intonation is. Now, this isn't necessarily like not having an accent or sounding like a native speaker, but you need to try to make it understandable. So this is more about understandability, okay? So if the listener can actually understand what you're saying without putting too much effort, okay? So just try to articulate the words as much as you can. Try to put stress on the words, on the syllables that need stress, and it needs to be intelligible, which means it needs to be understood by the listener. Okay, and then flow and speech, which is basically how fluid you are. So if you're not making too many pauses, if you're not using too many filler words, or maybe filler words in another language, in Spanish, let's say. So that's just fluency. Okay, how fluent you sound, whether you're thinking maybe too much, trying to translate in your head and wasting too much time, that's not somebody who's fluid, right? That's flow and speech. And finally, the hardest one that I was telling you about, which is language use. So that doesn't necessarily have to be hard. It just refers to, for example, the grammar that you use. So it's about using correct grammar, right? So not making too many grammar mistakes. But if you actually want to achieve a great score, like over 24, which is sometimes hard, you need to show grammar variety as well. So you need to show that you know how to use different grammar points. So for example, you can use different tenses, right? You can, if you don't just stick to the simple present, you use maybe simple past, present perfect, past perfect, whatever. So that's grammar variety. You need to show that you have achieved that certain variety in terms of grammar. And then vocabulary, which again, is not only about having lots of words, but also about using them appropriately. So if you don't say, like, for example, if you're referring to business, and if instead of saying people, or instead of saying customers, you say people, so it's not so appropriate in that context, right? So it's about the vocabulary, the words you use, and how appropriate they are in terms of context. Okay, so that's basically what they want. What you say, topic development, how you say it, delivery, whether it's clear or not, and the grammar that you use, the grammar and the vocabulary that you use. Okay, so those are the points that they're gonna be evaluating you based on. So what do you guys think about this? Do you have any questions? Is it clear?
Yeah, it is clear. I have a question. How do we link the ideas? Sometimes I stop myself and say like I don't have the perfect connector between ideas, and it's like not like just writing that you put a point to finish a sentence and then you continue to speaking. I'm not like very used to use connectors.
Okay.
That's
So,
when
okay, as for that question, I'd say it's mostly practice. So trying to have complete ideas and complete thoughts in sentences and using transitions. And using transitions is just practice again. So like if you're gonna switch to another idea, instead of just starting the other idea, you need to try to have a transition in the middle, right? And say, in addition, and then you add something. Now, if it's a contrasting idea, you say like, however, or nevertheless, and then you contrast that information. So it's mostly practice, but some templates will also help. So for example, in the first one that we're going to be looking at today, you're going to have a template. It's harder to have the template there because it's more open than the other tasks where you have to summarize. But for example, in task 2, 3, and 4, the integrated ones, the template is really helpful because it's already, it already has what it needs to have at least. So it has like 3 or 4 transitions in there, and the exact words that you're going to use to introduce the ideas that you will have. So in the first one, maybe you're going to have some problems if you don't feel like you can, I don't know, like connect your ideas too much. But in the other ones, you shouldn't, because it's really clear and right to the point what you need to do. So you can kind of make up for the first one, but it's just practice. So try to practice using those transitions and connectors. And yeah, I think you can do it. We're going to see one by one, though. We're going to see question by question what exactly you need to have and how you can connect those ideas. So it should be okay.
okay.
Okay, any other question here?
No more questions, I suppose.
Okay, so let's start with the independent question. Okay, now this independent question is independent, so it's just on your opinion. You don't have to summarize anything. You're just gonna give your opinion. So they will basically ask you something. They will give you a question about your opinion. Now, the good thing about this question is that it's always gonna be a closed question. So you will always have 2 options, okay? It's a paired choice question. So sometimes you have 3, but you will always have options from which to choose. So you don't have to think that much. Before August 2019, you used to have 2 independent questions. And one of those questions was like very open, like tell me about an experience that you like. And that was harder because you needed to think like, okay, so what am I gonna talk about, right? But in this one, you have the options there. So you don't have to do a lot of thinking. You have A or B, and you just need to choose one of them, okay? Now, after you hear the question, you guys will be given 15 seconds to prepare your response, which is definitely not a lot. So it's all about practicing that part. And you'll have to answer the question in 45 seconds. Okay, so 45 seconds to answer the question, 15 to prepare.
And
Any
what do you
questions?
exactly do in those 15 seconds? I was like, when I was taking the practice exam, was like 15 seconds of waiting. I didn't know what to do in those 15 seconds. Like think about what I'm gonna say or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're allowed to take some notes, so you could take notes, but I honestly just recommend that you think of the main idea that you'll have, because you need to have a main idea. So we're gonna see that part. I suggest, it depends, right? So you're gonna say like, okay, I prefer A because of these reasons. So what I'm gonna tell you guys is try to only have one reason, at least one reason, right? But I would say it's better to have just one, and you're gonna have to think of that reason during those 15 seconds. So if you have one, you don't have to take notes or anything. So I know it's not a lot, but it's enough to think of that reason. And then everything else is gonna have to be improvised. You can never like prepare the 45 seconds. That's another mistake. So people start writing like word by word what they're gonna say, starting with the intro and so on. It's not enough to prepare a 45-second response. Okay, so 15 seconds is just to think. Now, my advice, when you guys are practicing, if you want to get better at that, at thinking faster and improvising, don't use the 15 seconds. Try to read the question and answer it directly. So you read the question and start answering with the 45 seconds there. And that way you're going to get faster at improvise. Okay. And I'm going to give you one more tip for that, but later. Now the topics. These are the topics that the questions are going to be about. Okay, now the one that's on the left, that's like 90% of the time you'll have one of those topics. Okay, it's going to be about work, about education, about relationships, recreation, entertainment, travel, or lifestyle and health. Okay, so the questions are pretty simple. They ask like, do you prefer to work alone or with someone else? Or do you think it's better to get married young or wait a couple of years? Or maybe, do you prefer to travel? Would you prefer to travel to Europe or to Asia? I don't know. Or maybe, do you prefer to work out in the morning or in the afternoon? So those are the types of questions you get. They're not that complicated. Now, sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, I've seen some questions that are like on hard, they're more broad topics. So they could ask your opinion on things like technology, you know, like, do you think technology has had mostly a positive effect or a negative effect? Or finance decisions. Would you prefer to buy a house or invest in the stock market, let's say? The environment is something that appears a lot. So, you know, do you think it's a good idea to install solar energy? So that comes up a lot. And sometimes you get social and political issues. So things like the government, violence, prison time, that sort of thing. But honestly, this is not that common. So your chances are you get one of the first ones. Now it's okay. It's good to practice with both, you know, better be prepared for the worst. But usually you have one of these. Now, what I'm gonna say, my tip, practice makes perfect, first of all. And second, since you know the topics, try to check out some vocabulary, some expressions, even some ideas related to these topics. So I myself am gonna give you, I have some vocabulary related to those topics. So I don't know where it is. I think it might be. It's one of these. Okay. Not sure, but I'll send you guys some vocabulary related to those topics. Maybe I can print. Okay, I'm pretty sure I have it here. Okay, well, either way, I'll send you guys that vocabulary. I'll send you some connectors and transitions to practice. And one more thing I'm gonna send is some ideas. Okay, I think this is really cool. And I'm not asking you like to memorize ideas, but what you can do is just like, you can just take a look at this document that I sent and give it one read. Okay, I'm not asking you to memorize it or anything, but I'd say, like, for example, in this one, I can show you some examples. So you have some common arguments about these common topics. Okay, so for example, education, right? We said it's a big one. So we have some ideas here, like technology and education, the disadvantages, the advantages, higher education, homeschooling. So those ideas can help you once you're taking the test, maybe that's gonna come to your mind. Okay, so just take a look at this. I'll send you these documents later. Check out some vocabulary, some expressions, some ideas. And that's also gonna help you come across better ideas and do it faster when you're preparing or when you are already in your answering the question. Yeah, I think that's a great thing to do. So any questions now? Okay. So before we look at the tips, the example. Okay, so for example, this is kind of how it's gonna be. It's an example. Can anyone please read the question?
Yeah. State whether you agree or disagree with the following statement. Then explain your reasons using specific details in your explanation. Learning through online courses is more efficient than learning in the traditional classroom setting. Preparation time, 15 seconds. Response time, 45 seconds.
Okay, so that's how it's gonna be. I would show you a video. I have one video of the instructions and everything, but maybe we shouldn't waste our time. So at the beginning, they read you the instructions, and then they just, okay, here it is. And then they just deliver the question, and they start with the timer. The good thing is that everything is gonna be with the timer there, so you don't actually have to do anything, but just look at the screen. So for example,
Number 1. In this question, you will be asked to give your
opinion about a familiar topic. After you hear the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak. State whether you agree or
right, they just have the question in there, you have your time, and once they have read the question, they start the timer.
Learning through online courses is more effective than learning in the traditional classroom setting.
Begin to prepare your response after the beep.
Okay, so that's how it works. And then they say begin to speak after the beep. And then you have another beep and the time. So you really don't have to do anything but read the question, prepare, and then speak. So let's see what you need to do, okay? But before, I'll give you some tips, okay? Now, the first one is that you don't have to be honest, and there's no right or wrong answer, okay? So it's not like they're expecting you to choose one specifically, and if you don't choose that one, you're gonna get it wrong. You can say whatever you wanna say, that's why it's independent, and they're not gonna be judging you or evaluating what you think or what you believe or anything, right? It's about how you say it and how you explain what you say, not about what your response is. So try not to think too much about how you actually think, because I think that's one of the problems. In your mind, you don't have to be, okay, how do I feel about this? Which one is actually better? You don't have to be thinking like that. My advice, think of the one that's easier to talk about. So the first idea that comes to your mind, you need to work on that one. So if your first idea is, okay, maybe expenses. Okay, so the one that's less expensive, the cheaper option would be online courses, right? That's the first idea that I have, because you don't have to spend money on commuting, maybe to college or to school. So if that's your first idea, then stick to that one. So you're gonna talk about that. You're gonna say that online courses is better because it's cheap. So just try to think of the first idea that comes to your mind. I'm not gonna consider, okay, it's cheaper, but what about the quality of the teaching? What about the learning? Maybe traditional classes are better in that way. So think of just one idea, okay? Think about one of the reasons or the advantages of one of the options, okay? Try not to consider everything that's involved in this question. So choose your answer. If it's gonna be online courses, and choose one reason, okay? The expenses or the cost. Same thing if you do for the other one. So don't think about the actual answer, just think of one of the reasons or one of the advantages of one of the options that you have. Now, second thing is you need to have a strong position. That's another thing. Even if deep down you think that both are okay, you think that, okay, I think both have their advantages, so I don't really have a preference, I like both. Even if that's your honest opinion, you need to change it, okay? You always need to choose one of the options. Is it better or not? So online courses or traditional courses, which one I'm gonna choose, okay? You don't have to kind of hesitate. Try not to be like, I think that online courses are great because they're cheaper, but I also think that traditional classes may be more effective. If you do that, you're just gonna complicate yourself. It's gonna be harder for you to keep up the structure of an argumentative response, to organize your response and everything else. So always have one strong position, okay? Don't hesitate, try to make it look like you're 100% sure of your response. When you're answering, you wanna try to make it as personal and as specific as it can be. So you need to have some details, okay? I'm gonna show you what the ETS says about this, but you need to have some examples and some details. So when you have examples, honestly, I think the three of you have like really good grammar that you can use. You're already advanced speakers, I'd say the three of you. So my advice, try to make it personal, okay? Because that way you're gonna be able to show a lot of grammar. So if they talk about this, don't just tell me about people, right? Don't tell me. So people who take online courses tend to have better concentration and therefore better grades. Try to talk about yourself. So tell me, I myself, when I take online courses, I have better grades. And then you give an example, right? And make it personal. So you could say, I was taking this biology course last semester, and I ended up having a 92 as my final grade. So be specific, okay? Don't be afraid of giving those details. It's totally okay, and it's actually better if you do.
Can I talk about examples of my life or my early experiences?
Yes, I suggest you do. It's way better, especially if they're personal, right? Maybe if it's about like the environment, maybe not, but most of the time when they're personal, try to give personal examples. I'm gonna talk about the examples too. I'd say that for the three of you, because sometimes, yes, in some cases you don't have that grammar yet, so it could be harder. But in your case, I'd say yes, definitely. Try to have personal examples. Now, what else? Try not to overstress about the timer. It's okay if you end your response in like 40 seconds. If you have said everything you needed to say, at least one reason and one example, it's okay. So try not to like get obsessed with the time. And another thing is, as you practice, you'll realize that you're gonna know for how long you should be speaking. You're gonna get a sense of what it is 45 seconds. So it's gonna become easier. Right now, it may be like you're not gonna have too much control, but once you practice a lot, you're gonna realize, okay, so this is about 45 seconds. I need to stop, or I need to introduce my example now. It's all about practice, I think, the timing part. When you practice, try to practice with somebody that can give you some feedback. So during the speaking sessions, we're supposed to be doing that, right? I'll give you some feedback. Or record your responses too, and you can give yourself feedback. One more thing is practice in a noisy room. I think this is interesting. If you're taking the test in a test center, practice in a noisy room. So don't make it so quiet, because it's likely that it's not that quiet the day of your test. Okay? If you're taking it in a test center, there may be other people taking it as well. So it's better to be prepared. And if you can practice in a room where other people are speaking, that's a great idea. Okay. And the last one, I don't think it's going to apply for you, which is don't use complex grammar or vocabulary unless you're confident with that. I don't think this is going to be for you guys, because I think you have good grammar. So try to use actually more grammar. That's what I can say. All right, so those are some general tips. I'll give you more as we go. But any questions here? Okay, guys, so let's start doing. Let's see what we actually have to do. So you read the question, right? You see your two options: online courses or traditional courses. You're gonna notice that there are different types of questions. This one is the most common one: agree or disagree. But there are others as well, like, do you prefer traditional classroom settings or online courses? That could be another phrasing, or like, Do you think that a traditional classroom setting is better than online classes? You can have any type of question on really, but the thing is, it doesn't matter. Okay, try not to worry too much about that. You can answer in the same way. You always have 2 or 3 options and you need to choose one. So what we're gonna do is right now, let's think we're in those 15 seconds. I want you guys to tell me which option you would choose, online courses or traditional classroom setting. Which one? Which one and why? One short reason. Maybe Luciana, what would you choose?
I would choose online courses.
Okay, and why?
Mainly because of, in the sense of group projects, for example, I have found it easier and more efficient to like get together in a group through Zoom or through Google Meet, any of those platforms. So I could accomplish the task that the teacher has assigned us in a faster and better way. I have gotten better grades in my works on this online stage.
Okay, that's a great explanation. I really like that. You have your position, which is going to be you prefer online courses, and you have your reason, and you already explained it and made it personal. That could have been a response, actually, maybe with some more details, and it was great. So that's it. That's what you need to do when you're thinking. Just think about what you're going to say. So I'm going to say online courses are better because it's easier to get together for group projects. And that's it. You don't have to think of anything but that. Now, in your response, here's what you need to do when you are actually speaking. So these are the elements that you need to have. Okay, you need to have 3 basic elements. So you need to have an introduction at the beginning. You need to have a reason. And then you need to have an example. Okay, so those are the 3 basic things that you need to make sure you have. The introduction, a reason, and an example or more details. Okay, but preferably just an example. Now, some people are going to say you should have 2 reasons, not just one. It's more complete. So you actually can have 2, 3, 4, as many reasons as you want. But again, I think that when you have one, you allow yourself to focus on only one idea, to elaborate better, to have a longer example, which means use more grammar. And it's also easier to just think of one idea, right? It's harder to get off topic. It's easier to concentrate on that, maybe to illustrate it more. But it depends again. So that's why I want you guys to practice and see what works for you. So practice with the timer. If you feel that you are really good with time, you have your reason, you have your example, but you still have like 20 extra seconds, then you can consider adding one more reason. Okay, so you can say, okay, it's better for group projects. And also it's, I don't know, maybe it's cheaper, right? What I was saying. But that's only in case you usually have extra time. That's something completely extra. So as an extra, if you really have extra time, you can have one more reason and you can have a short conclusion, which is optional again. All right, you don't have to have a conclusion. So those are the elements. Sure.
So they give us like 2 options and we have to choose one of them. And we have to talk about the other one, like the cons about that, or only the reasons why I have chosen the first one or the second one. Do I have to mention?
You only have to talk about the one that you chose. Now, maybe the advantage of one is the disadvantage of the other, right? I don't know if you know what I mean, but it's going to be just one reason. Like you don't have to, what you mean is compare or contrast, you don't have to do that. You don't have to be like, okay, so online courses are better first because it's easier to work on group projects. And second, I don't know, and then you compare, right? And you say traditional classes are not effective because you don't pay attention. So you don't have to do that. You don't have to have like one reason for one and then the disadvantage of the other, or contrast or anything. You just have to.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So I want you guys to look at this. This is what the ETS says in the material they have on their website. They give you some sample, well, not sample responses, but some explanation of what you should have. So for example, they say, right, some people enjoy taking risks and trying new things. Others are not adventurous, they're cautious and prefer to avoid danger, right? So taking risks or being cautious. Now they say, this is what you should have. They say to respond this question, you should first state what your opinion is and do it clearly, okay? So in your introduction, it needs to be really clear what your opinion is. Try to have that intro and try to make it clear. So this is what I prefer, this is what I think. Don't hesitate, don't try to complicate things at the beginning. So do you think it's better to take risks or be cautious? You need to state that in the intro. Then you should give reasons to support your opinion. Okay, so if you take the position that you think it's better to take risks, you might give an example of a time when you or someone you know took a risk and was rewarded. Okay, so look at this. They say you need to give an example, right, of a time when you or someone you know took a risk and was rewarded. Now, the example should have good details, so it should be specific, and the relationship between the example and your opinion should be clear. Okay, so it needs to be really clear. If you're saying that it's better to be cautious because you have less, I don't know, you're probably going to live more, then your example needs to illustrate that, right? It cannot be about something else. It needs to really show how you're going to live longer by being cautious. Same thing if you go for the other option. Okay, so that's what you need to have. A reason and an example, at least. You may have more than one reason, but you need to have at least one reason and one example. So in your introduction, that's what you're going to do. You're going to answer the question directly. Okay, so I would definitely say, for example, that online courses are way more effective than traditional classes. So it's pretty clear what my position is. My advice for the introduction, try not to say like, I think. Okay, that's too, it doesn't show so much vocabulary. So I think this is better. That's too common, right? You could say, I would say that this is the more ideal option, maybe, to paraphrase it. And I'm going to give you some suggestions. So I'm going to send you these. You have some options here. So for example, you could say, when it comes to education, I feel that technology makes it better. So I believe that online courses are better, maybe. Or the way I see it, online courses are way more effective than traditional ones. But in my opinion, personally, to be honest, right? Instead of I think. Now, this one's great, I think, because it has grammar, right? It has good grammar to use. Second conditional. If I were to take a stand, so if I were to decide, or if I had the choice, I would say that online courses are way better. So you can maybe use one of these to start with some good grammar variety. You can use one of these two if you ask me, to me, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, or I haven't given it much thought, but I'd say that online classes are the best option. And then you go, right? So you have some options here. Go for the one that feels more right for you, that's more you, okay? But you need to have that introduction. So you answer the question at first. You say, I would say that online courses are more effective. And that's your answer. And then as quickly as you can, you need to introduce your reason. So you say since, or you could say as, for, and those are the connectors, right? Try not to say because. To show more vocabulary, you could say since, you could say as, for, due to the fact that, right? Or this is mainly since. So try not to say because. So since, and then you give your reason, right? So I definitely say that online courses are better or are more effective since they are easier when working on group projects. So try to do it clearly as well, so directly, right? Now, after you have your reason, you can explain a bit more if you want. So you could say they are easier to work on or when you have group projects. You can explain a bit more. You could say, sometimes professors assign work projects, and it could be hard to get together to work on them, especially when you are working or when you are working on so many other assignments that you could have. So you can explain more if you want, but it's not necessary, okay? It's optional in case you usually have more time. After you explain, you need the example. So you need to say, for instance, for example, to illustrate, that's another connector, right? Or not transition. And you give your example. So you say, for instance, because of the pandemic, last semester I took all my classes online, and I feel that I had the option to learn a lot more than I would have in case I had taken one-on-one or face-to-face classes. I had better grades, or I don't know. Well, in this case, if we're talking about working on groups, maybe I could say every time I had an assignment, every time I had a group assignment, it was way easier to communicate with my friends or with my teammates, and we would, I don't know, start a Zoom meeting and work on what we needed to work on, and do this or do that. Or you can maybe give a more specific example and say, last week I needed to work on I needed to work on a presentation, on my final biology presentation. So I don't know, I created a Zoom meeting, and we decided what we wanted to do at night, later at night, something that we, I don't know, couldn't have done if we had traditional classes, maybe. So basically, you just need to try to give an example there. Doesn't have to be personal, it could be general too, but try to have an example. Another option would be like to talk about a fact. So you could say, I don't know, in fact, researchers have shown that, and then you make up something, right? You could say that, I don't know, that because of the pandemic, people have started, I don't know, students have started to have better grades, maybe. Okay, so I can just make up something there. So it could be something like that. It could be a fact, or it could be a personal experience, or it could be just a general example if you want. Just try to have some details to support what you're saying. So is that okay so far? Reason, example, intro, reason, example. Any questions there? And finally, if you have more time, as we were saying, if you look at the timer and you still have 20 seconds, which is usually not going to be the case, but if you still have like 20 seconds to go, then you can add one more reason. Now, you don't have to illustrate the second one. You probably won't have time for that, but you can have one more reason. You could say, besides, I don't know, online classes are cheaper since you don't have to spend money commuting to college or to campus, maybe. So you can add that second reason. It doesn't have to be that explained because it's kind of like an extra one. Okay, the first one needs to be well explained. The second one, you can just leave it there. And if you have extra time, you can go with a short conclusion and say, so those are the main reasons why every time I get the chance, I choose to have online courses. Or those are the reasons why I feel this way, why I prefer this option, why I agree with this statement. Anything you want to say. But again, it's totally optional. You don't have to have that conclusion. So any questions now? Okay, guys. Let's do something. You guys are gonna do one, and then I'll show you a sample response, and we're gonna analyze it if we have time. If not, we'll do it tomorrow. Okay. Okay, this is the one. So the question says, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? We can learn a lot from making mistakes. So now you guys have 15 seconds to prepare your responses. I'll let you know when to start, and some of you are gonna go. So start preparing. Okay. So anyone wants to go? Does anyone want to go first? Maybe Shamir, you want to try?
Yeah, okay. I will
Okay.
start.
All right.
I consider that that committing mistakes, it's a very important stage in learning process because when you are learning something, it's very important to acquire or to get the concepts. For example, when I was a child, I learned math through committing many mistakes. And last year I had to give classes of math. So committing mistakes helped me to learn math.
Okay, good. So great. I like that you had a reason, although I'm not sure if it was so clear. What was your reason?
Because I thought that committing mistakes, it's a very important stage in learning because learning is a continuous process, and in this process you have to mistake, and you have to try it again and again.
Okay, got it. So yes, that's a great reason. You have to repeat things in order to learn. And you had your example as well. So you said that you learn math by making mistakes. And last year when you had to when you had to give math classes, then you were better, right? Because of the mistakes you made. Okay, that's great. I like that you have the three elements. What can I say? Grammar was good as well. You use the transitions. So I think it's a great start. Hold on. Maybe vocabulary, and this is for all of you. Always check out some adjectives. That's also another quick way to improve vocabulary. Like for example, important, right? Instead of very important, you can use other words. Can you think of other words? For important or very important? Maybe you can say crucial, vital, right? Key, essential.
Essential, fundamental.
Exactly. So yes. So those adjectives like good, bad, okay, important, beneficial, right? Those adjectives you can look for some other words. So would anybody, okay, let's do another one before I show you the sample responses. This one here. Some people like to watch television news programs every day, while others like to watch them only now and then. Which one do you prefer? Include details and examples to support your explanation. So 15 seconds to prepare. Okay. Does anyone want to go?
Luciana, go.
Okay. Luciana? Do you want to go?
Okay, it's fine.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, personally, I prefer to watch news every now and then, since I like to be informed, but at the same time, having an excess of news makes me very anxious. For example, when there was these problems in Bolivia protests in 2019, learning about everybody who was hurt, everything that the government was doing, like it really like got over my head. I couldn't sleep. It wasn't good for my neither my mental or physical health. But nevertheless, I like to be informed about current events.
Okay, great. That was a perfect response. Nice. So well done. I think you got it. And something I liked and I didn't say, your example is like about 60% of your response, right? And it should be that way. It's great. So you have like your introduction, it was pretty clear. I prefer to watch news now and then. You have your reasons, scenes. I like to be informed, but watching the news all the time makes me anxious. And you had your example, which was great for grammar. So I don't know if you noticed, but you used a lot of good grammar there. And you use transitions too. I noticed how at the end you were saying but, and then you change it for nevertheless, right? So that's great. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, let's.
30 out of 30.
I'm sorry, here you go.
30 out of 30 was that answer.
Yeah, that answer was 30 or 30. Okay, so Rodrigo, you're gonna go now. Next class, I'll show you some sample responses, okay? We'll analyze them and see how much they got. But let's do this one now. It says, do you think it's a good idea for children to help their parents do household chores as soon as they're old enough? Use details and examples in your response. 15 seconds. Okay, so Rodrigo, ready to go?
I personally would say that it is better for the children when they are old enough to help their parents with the households. Only when they have work, they have a job, and they have like earnings, monthly earnings. That will help them to prepare them to be independent in the future. For example, when I got my first job, my parents we talked about that, and I share expenses with them about some of the groceries and supermarket. Um, that's it. No,
Okay, that's fine too. Great response. Maybe what I could say, like your example, right? You were explaining how when you got your first job, you shared expenses. But if your point is that it helps you become more independent, then try to emphasize that part. So in your examples, say something like, this experience helped me become more independent, and now, these are the results of that experience, and that's why I think so, right? So try to always emphasize the connection that your example has with your reason.
yeah, I was gonna explain that, but I was off time.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
problem. But don't worry, try to kind of make your reason shorter. So think of the reason, right? If your reason is going to be being more independent, go with that. So just one line. So I believe this since this experience makes you be more independent. And then write to your example to have more time there. And also careful with the question though, right? Because I think the question wasn't really about having a job, but children. So this is not for young people, but children helping their parents do household chores, right? So careful with the question. It's about doing household chores. So It's okay though, it's a great start. Tomorrow we'll practice a lot more. I also want to look at different types of questions because sometimes there are some patterns. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna analyze some sample responses and see what else we can do. Do you have any questions so far though? Anything up until now? Okay, guys, then I'm sending the daily survey and I'll see you tomorrow.
Andrea, I'm having problems with the appointment of the speaking calls on the website.
What kind of problems?
I can't schedule a meeting for the
Okay, that's weird.
speaking call. I don't know
I'm
why.
I don't know what may be happening. I'm gonna talk to Ruth. I'll send her a text and I'll tell her to get back to you. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.
Goodbye.